Hi everyone, welcome back to Perfume Nation. If you're anything like me, you love discovering new fragrances. But sometimes you just can't get to a boutique to test them out. And to be fair, many of us, if not majority of us, don't live within the walking distance, sometimes even not even within commutable distance, to a large, lavishly staffed perfume boutique. I don't. Even if you live in the big city, sometimes those boutiques have odd working hours. They don't necessarily have all the niche brands, which these days is nearly impossible to have a brick and mortar kind of place that will stock even 70% of the niche brands that exist on the market. And not to mention that if you abuse their free sampling services that they offer just for anybody who walks in the door, sometimes sales associates get a little moody when we come weekly, like to Sunday Mass, and don't buy anything. Overall, this is a very useful ceremony and a ritual for many people who have that kind of luxury of truly sampling things on their skin in a beautiful environment, talking to the experts. It's a beautiful, beautiful opportunity, not available for most of us. So what do we do then? Blind buy. But we all know how risky that can be. One person's holy grail is another person's headache in a bottle, and multiply that headache by 100 and you will end up with a collection size like mine. Today, I will share my hard-earned top tips for minimizing the risk of blind buying fragrances. Spoiler alert, it's totally possible to shop smart, increase your awareness and olfactive vocabulary, and satisfy that curiosity without regretting your choices too much or breaking the bank to that matter. First, I think not enough people do it at the beginning of their journey, and I think it's especially important that we focus on that step because the beginning, it's all about that seed, that bug of curiosity that marks the beginning. I never had a few. Even when I had absolutely no money, I had more than 3 perfumes somewhere in my collection. I would buy the cheapest, the dirt cheap $1 perfumes from God knows what origin, but I always loved diversity. But even there, once you start becoming curious, what else is out there? What are they talking about when they mention a fougere or a shipper or something that smells clean but musky? How can musky smell clean? Well, welcome to the history chapter of white musks, the aromatic ingredient that came to high perfumery from detergents in Western culture. Anyway, once you get that little bug, I would heavily insist, not just recommend, insist that you first sit down and analyze what you have. Find your own descriptors that go beyond the marketing olfactory pyramid that you can read online. That is very useful. They do work hard trying to bring sort of memorable, perceptive comparisons that we can anchor before we even get to experience the scent itself. However, I find that for any given person in their journey of exploring the world, exploring their memories, their feelings, their powers, exploring how scents regulate nearly everything important in our lives, to come up with your own vocabulary. Write down your own adjectives or your own memories. is something makes you feel like childhood, safe, calm, vibrant, anxious, melancholic. Anything and everything goes as long as it's a very precise, as precise as you can be with respect to how it makes you feel. Feelings usually are the best descriptors for fragrances because processing of fragrances is happening mostly via the limbic system that also controls our and processes our feelings. Then you'll start seeing parallels. Maybe spicy roses always give you this feeling of lavishness. Maybe citrusy vetiver always make you feel contemplative or cheerful, whatever that is. Then pick one ingredient or a fragrance family or feeling, if you wish, if you want to be cerebral, thoughtful. You want to be thoughtful. That means quite energetic in order to do cognitive tasks, but not too jittery so you can sit still, right? And then start researching for that very term online and what other fragrances people have described as such. I would say working through a marketing pyramid, once you establish some kind of relationship between what they say is in the what the fragrance can you remind you of in the world and what your personal descriptors are. Once you find at least one relationship, explore the marketing pyramid, because using Fragrantica, I'm still blown away that a lot of people don't know that Fragrantica.com exists. Use that source and many others in order to dig deeper and see what other fragrances have that component. For example, let's say you are drawn to warm vanilla. Maybe then you can go with pink pepper and tonka beans and see what that's like. You always liked fresh citrus. Maybe it's time to explore greens, because they are relatively often met together in any given fragrance. Maybe you always loved somewhat smoky spices. Well, maybe you're ready for oud. And go with what you know and expand gradually by associations to things that you know you love. When I wanted to branch out from smoky, somewhat herbal ambers more toward gourmands, which, believe it or not, were always a challenge for me to enjoy, I started by exploring various amber scents that also had other more confectious, more edible gourmand type of components. And I surprised myself by finding a few that I actually really liked. And they were not the same kind of amber that I was so used to, that was a staple for me, and which I had probably 3 to 5 very close clones of in my collection. So it felt familiar, and at the same time, it brought something new, and it kind of became this fractal search from there for me. Next tip: read. I touched upon it already, and I want to dive even deeper into that. Fragrance communities online are gold mines. Look for keywords like what you wrote down. These searches for clean fragrance or demure or contemplative to that end, or romantic or childhood smell. These open up such incredible avenues for exploration in the forums and different social media groups. You will meet so many wonderful people who share your passion. You will see how sometimes dead on the descriptions are with how you feel about any given perfume, and that means that you can rely on this person in their descriptions for something else that you've never ever smelled. Sometimes it's uncanny. We have our fragrant twins out there in the world. Go find yours. Sometimes it's quite the opposite. Something that you love or hate, somebody else's loves. I not once, not even twice, found my, I wouldn't call it nemesis, but my antipod in the fragrance community. And every time they said like, this is the fragrance, absolutely go get it, I knew I had to stay away. I knew that that would be way too powerful, way too stinky for my nose, or way too sweet, or way too this, or way too mineral. And when they said, oh, I'm not impressed, I was like, oh, that might be subtle and complex enough that I could give it a chance. It does work. And it doesn't mean that we have to be at odds with each other, because it's purely the matter of taste. So finding a striking similarity in the taste with someone can be just as useful as finding your antipod in the fragrance world. And then you can also compare notes and say like, okay, if something works for you, I know I probably should steer clear, and vice versa. Not only that is super useful, but when I found a few of my fragrance antipodes, we had some of the most delightful, fruitful, and heartwarming swaps in the history of me collecting fragrances. Some of the things that I couldn't stand and blind bought made them so happy. It's a win-win. Also, note and write down how other reviewers and people describe their experience. If multiple people mention, let's say, smells like sunscreen, and you hate that oily coconutty smell, cross the fragrance off your list. There is such a thing as strength in numbers. Some fragrances are very controversial and very can pull different facets on people with different tastes, olfactory references, and skin types. But sometimes it's people will say it nearly in unison that this is that, this is that, this is similar, not similar. Pyramid does make sense. The marketing pyramid doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So we are here for each other for a reason. Let's stay connected. Let's stay together. That's what makes it fun, and that's what makes it truly fulfilling, is being part, an active part of the community. Okay, I get it. Decants are fun. They are fun. And once you discover the world of decants, you feel you finally found not just one candy store, but about 10,000 of them all over the world. For this very reason, buying decants can very quickly become overwhelming and just as expensive as blind buying a few bottles here and there. Ask me how I know. There are so many places to buy them, and sometimes you just don't know where to start. So here's my advice. Stick with what's truly calling your name or belongs to very few, no more than 3 fragrance categories that you are exploring at the time. There is such a thing as brain fatigue and olfaction fatigue, but in terms of oversampling, it's mostly brain fatigue. We at some point either start liking everything or not liking anything at all. And when you look at how many decants you have amassed, and if 70% of them are something that you would never wear, you're kind of stuck and you still have a sizable hole in your wallet. And here is another kind of con of decants. They're hard to resell. People do try, and it's mostly a losing game, because with decants, with blind buying the bottles or reselling the bottles, the bottle effect is real. People do want to get a full thing, the full experience with the packaging. Sometimes when I resell a bottle, people even ask me if I have a regional card box packaging, which always blows my mind. I don't care. Like the outer packaging of a fragrance for me exists for those 2 minutes as I'm unraveling it to get the juice out. But yet some people are that particular. And when we're talking about a decant in some nameless glass bottle, not only it really diminishes the value, the overall value of the purchase for most people who would be looking for that scent online, it also makes it very hard to keep the transactions honest and to keep your transaction proceeds in your integrity, because more often than not, you will be accused of selling a fake, and there will be no way you can prove that that was an original. There are a lot of scams happening from both sides in the decant world. So again, I would say stick with the decants and the scents that are truly calling your name, and buy from sources that you have some affiliation with. Some of the decant companies has been here for now, probably fair to say, nearly a decade, and some sketchy sketchy sellers that here today, not here tomorrow. I don't have to teach you the basics. You know how internet works. I would say also, if you are narrowing it down and you feel that you want way too many things at once, might be a controversial opinion, but that's what I do. I start with a couple of highly rated options. I want a community consensus on what the fragrance represents and how it fits into the overall niche perfume world. This is something no brand will ever that information no brand will ever provide. For understandable reasons, every brand, when they create fragrances, unless they specialize in dupes, and that's usually Middle East, a lot of companies there almost take a pride in coming up with dupes for very expensive niche creations. Unless that's the case, most brands really invest in the originality, and they try to focus kind of on their own creative potential, on their own creative vision. And majority of them truly don't know how their new release or their bestseller, how it fits in the world at large. And mostly it is the fragrance reviewers online, on social media, on YouTube and other places that really put things together. I find that even sales associates in department stores since they are moved so often between different positions, departments, and they are there to make their career in sales, not in perfume consulting necessarily, they rarely can really provide adequate comparisons, because they're also incentivized not to send you to some obscure niche brand that only is produced in Italy and they have quarterly releases. They are incentivized to sell you what they have on the shelves. Even more so, there are sales quotas and bonuses for people who work in large department stores to sell things that are, either there are too many of them on the shelves, or it's a new release and they need to push it to get the sales going, to get the word out. So even people who sell fragrances for a living are not necessarily good guides for where any given fragrance, how it fits into the larger narrative of olfactory design. And that's where communities and bloggers and perfume reviewers and your own subjective statistics and your own history and knowing of the brands and of the notes and maybe even certain aspects of olfaction as a science and as technological aspects of the chemistry of aromatic ingredients can help. It's not a must by any means, but it can be helpful. So once the reviews are in and there is some kind of consensus or a thrilling dichotomy, then I pick that scent if it's already within my area of interest, and I go from there. All those caveats pointed out, decants are such a game changer. They let you test fragrances in real life situations on your skin in all possible climate changes, moods, inside, outside, with warm clothing, with light clothing, with your hair up, with your hair down, when it's raining, when it's snowing, when it's sunny, when it's humid, when it's dry. There is nothing closer to it. There is no other digital analog to knowing how you will live with any given scent and how it will change your mood, how it will change your life even, because what changes our mood? Consistent changes in mood change our thoughts. Changing our thoughts sometimes changes our habits. Changing our habits changes our lives. It's not too far of a stretch to say that certain fragrances truly got me through some of the most hurtful and turbulent, oh, I'm gonna cry, most hurtful and turbulent times in my life. For that, I'm very grateful. So, guess what? You don't have to commit to a full bottle right away if you're buying a decant. Not only that, you can have some really delightful, short-lived, romantic affairs with the scent. Use up a generous 8 to 10 ml and move on. And that's good. That's good. It's good enough, and sometimes you don't need more. However, here's a tough truth. Despite all that, blind buying exists for a reason, because it is what? It's exciting. It's so fun. It's the perfect dopamine hit kind of activity. It's like Christmas anytime you order these juicy 3-4 bottles from some gray reseller or Mercari or eBay or other places, or you organize a big swap. They are very exciting. However, the excitement wears off, just like with any dopamine-based addiction. It wears off rather quickly. The more you do it, the less fun it gets and the more regrets you accumulate. So, in order to keep blind buying fun, and at this point, I don't think it's something that can be 100% eradicated, maybe shouldn't be. Take your time. Enjoy wanting it, comparing it, exploring it. Let the reviews roll in. Jump in with your hot takes and opinions. Ask questions. Does it compare to this or that? Check for dupes. I am actually a big supporter of dupes as part of learning and exploration. And sample similar fragrances. If you get good recommendations, I do that all the time, mostly through decants. Jumping on the hype train with a new release is tempting for some people. I kind of taught myself not to be excited about new releases. And it's becoming easier and easier because there are just way too many of them. There are way too many of them. It's truly overwhelming. And I also cross off whole brands off my exploration lists because of overproduction. To give you a very controversial example, I do not shop or try Tom Ford fragrances unless I'm sent a PR set or sample or a bottle, or it's a swap or a subscriber recommendation. If somebody sends me a fragrance to try and or asks me to compare it with something else and give a more comprehensive kind of roundabout review of what this represents, what's better than this, what's similar to this, yada yada yada. So otherwise, I do not buy Tom Ford fragrances. I mean, I'm not gonna say that I'll never buy them, but the speed of overproduction that they've hit in the recent years is concerning to me. And it's not only to me. Let me know if you have such a practice of kind of staying away from brands who have a lot of releases, or you don't care. Either way, it's you do you. I'm just curious about the kind of the spread of opinions. So let's discuss in the comments as well. I think generally taking your time might be not the best for brands and the salespeople, but your wallet will definitely thank you for being patient. Even with the best prep, blind buys don't always work out, and that's okay. I just recommend keeping an open mind when you're blind buying something, so you don't have a super low crush if it doesn't live up to your expectations that you build up in your mind. And I also recommend that you have a plan in case something doesn't work out. You can resell. For me, reselling value is a huge factor when I decide whether I'm going to blind buy something or not. And usually the resale value is based on a brand, how well known is the brand, how good of a reputation they have, and certainly some, it's rare with new releases, but more with some of the best sellers by any given brand are easier to resell. You might not really recoup the money that you spend, but you will at least recoup some if it's one of the best sellers. You can swap fragrances if you are part of online fragrance communities or have a lot of friends who are into it. And here's my story about my fragrance antipodes. It's just warms my heart every single time I think about it, that we managed to make each other happy and get rid of things that we hated. And they are loving the things that I've sent them, and I'm loving the fragrances they've sent me. Next, you can gift a bottle. That said, I've heard down the grapevine that for those of us who are kind of perfume junkies, the family regifting channel can be quickly saturated. That said, I'm very grateful that my family accepts fragrances I'm not in love with in dozens. So for me, it's a definite path. It kind of makes me sometimes feel a bit too adventurous, but it's definitely a path. Consider that as well. I personally also often split bottles and gift decants to different people, because often, especially people who are really not that much into fragrance collecting, they might feel obligated to wear something they don't necessarily like if you gift them a full-size bottle. But a lot of people, without a second question, happily accept decants. If I spray it and they like it, I just give them the little bottle right there, right then. It's just almost like a little gift, a random unexpected gift for them on that day. It's such a joy to experience that, and I like doing that. And sooner or later, the whole bottle is gone. So I do that too, and you should consider doing that also. Through that, it might be that what doesn't work for you is someone else's perfect scent that might help take them through some really hard periods of their life. So there you have it. 5 ways to make blind buying less of a gamble. It will always remain a little bit of a gamble. If you are ready to start sampling, check out my decants for curated selection of some of my personal favorites. I promise it's much smaller commitment than going all in on a full bottle. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments what has been your best or worst blind buy. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share with your fellow perfume lovers, people who might enjoy this video as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.